Hi, everybody. So I'm hoping that business statistics is going really well for you so far. I haven't received a ton of questions, so I'm going to assume that you're doing okay. Please remember that if you are having trouble with anything, shoot me an email, shoot me a message through Canvas. I'd be more than happy to help you out. Speaking of which, I got a great question today about standard deviation. So a lot of the business statistics that you learned this week really aren't that difficult. They're the mean, the median, the mode, the range, but then you get to this crazy thing called variance and standard deviation. And what the heck are they? And there are so many steps to calculating them. So I wanted to show you a couple of easy ways to calculate them. And I'm going to use Google Sheets because you can also calculate your mean, your median, the mode, your standard deviation, all of that stuff in Google Sheets with the click of a button. And as business people, you're going to have to get used to using a spreadsheet anyway. You're going to have them in your life constantly if you do pursue things in business. So it's good to get a little bit used to using a spreadsheet. And Google Sheets, it's free to everybody. So it's a great one to use. So first of all, let's just talk really quickly about what is standard deviation, okay? So when you go through the slides for this module, right? They're going to say, oh, I think there are 6 steps to finding the standard deviation. What you want to think of the standard deviation is as you want to think of it as the average distance from the mean. So if I have a data set, the first thing I need to know is the mean because it's the average distance from the mean, right? So I find the distance from the mean for every single data point. So I would find the mean, I would subtract that mean from every single data point. If that value is positive, that means the value is above the mean. If the value is negative, it means the value is below the mean. Now I'm finding an average, right? To find an average, we add everything up and we divide by how many there are. So what I would do next is I would take those distances from the mean and I would add them all up. The only thing that's weird that really happens is that when I have deviations from the mean and I add them all up, I'm always going to get 0. Some are above the mean, some are below the mean, meaning some are positive and some are negative. And as long as you've done those deviations correctly, you will always get a sum of 0. So in order to correct this, what happens in the formula is they square those deviations. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly with a whiteboard just to kind of show you what I mean here about standard deviation from the mean, okay? So I'm going to use some things here. X, I'm going to use, those are my data points. X bar, it has a little line over it. This is your sample mean. So this is our average or our mean, okay? And oftentimes, if you read the text, they'll show you this, but sigma, which is a little weird curly R, this is what they use for standard deviation. So I'm just going to, I'm not very good with my mouse on this. I'm just going to go say SD for standard deviation. So our standard deviation, the first thing we do, we have to take all the deviations. So we're taking X and we're subtracting X bar from every single one. And normally I would add these up, but I'm going to get 0. So what do we do to correct for that? We want to make them all positive. So one way to make things all positive in math is to square them. So we're going to take all those deviations and we're going to square them. Then we're going to add them all up. Now this is where we use another Greek letter, which is called uppercase sigma. It's a big backwards E. So we add them all up, okay? And then when you take an average, we add everything up and then we divide by how many there are. So we're going to divide by how many there are, which N usually is our sample size. Except in this case, a lot of times you're taking a sample and it's what we call 1 degree of freedom from the actual data set. So we're actually going to divide by N-1 for a sample standard deviation, okay? So I take all of my data values, I subtract the mean, I square them, I add them up, and I divide by N-1 or the sample size -1. It's a lot of steps. So let me show you how we're going to do this in Google Sheets and make it so much easier, okay? But this is the average distance from the mean. And that means that the smaller that number is, the closer all the data points are to the mean, the larger that value is, the more spread out all those data points are. Okay, and that's important to know. Is it a spread out data set or are they all kind of chunked towards one value? So now let me share my screen towards my Google Sheet. Okay, so Google Sheet, you just want to open a blank spreadsheet. I'm going to make up some data right now. I'm going to pretend we had a test and somebody got a, let's see here, we'll go a 90, an 85, a 72, an 38, an 83. I'm just making stuff up. 75, 92, 61, 97. I don't have many in the 80s. Let's do an 87. Okay, I have 10 data points. There were 10 people in the class. Well, the first thing I can do if I want to is I can find the mean very easily without actually having to add them all up and divide how many there are. So in Google Sheets, what you'll do is you'll press the equals button, and then you're going to start typing the word average. So I'm going to do A, B, E, and you can see it's going to bring up all these things, and I'm going to click average. And then I want to take the average of this data set. So you're just going to click the first one and drag it down. And then you can just press enter. And boom, there's my average. So this value right here is my mean or my average, whatever you want to call that. Now, I just showed you that formula. Looked really scary. A lot of steps. Guess what? We don't have to use it. Yay! We can actually do our sample standard deviation right here in Google Sheets. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to press equals again. I'm going to start typing ST, and you'll see all of a sudden STDEV pops up. Now just be careful which one you use. There are two standard deviations. There's a standard deviation for a population, and there's a standard deviation for the sample. The population is if I have the entire set of whatever it is. So say I'm talking about the entire college, and I have everybody's scores for this test. That would be the population. But if I'm just taking a sample of a certain amount of scores, which is usually what we do in statistics, we take a sample instead of having to calculate every single one. For example, in business, you might later talk about quality control, right? If you're doing quality control measures for a product that you're manufacturing. And instead of testing every single product that comes down the line, like say I'm doing coffee makers, and I want to make sure that the coffee maker, like a Keurig, isn't going to overfill the cup. Right? Anybody ever had that happen? It's awful. It's not going to overfill the cup as I make my coffee, because that could hurt somebody. It could burn somebody. We can't test every single Keurig machine. That would take forever, right? So instead, we would maybe take every 5th Keurig and test it and make sure that it's falling within the correct guidelines. So usually we're taking a sample and not a population, which is why we're going to use stdev.s, which is the sample standard deviation. That's the one that's going to divide by n-1 instead of just dividing by n, the sample size. So if you're not getting something right, like on the quiz or whatever, because you might be using .p, or you might be using this first one, which is technically .p as well. So you want to use stdev.s. And again, all I'm going to do here is click the first one and drag down, and then press enter, and boom, I have my standard deviation. Isn't that nice? Okay, now if you also want to calculate your mean and your mode with this, you can. So if I want to calculate my median, I would go equals, and I'd start typing the word median. Again, click it, and then I can drag down, isn't this nice? And press enter, and there is my median. And I believe Google Sheets will also do our mode. And we may not have a mode here. I don't know if I did any values that were the same. Yeah, not available. So our mode, we don't have one because no data point happened twice. Just to show you that it does work, I'm going to just double the 87. Okay, if I find the mode now this time, okay, I would highlight, and it would give me the 87 because that's the one that occurred twice. Okay, but with this one left out, we're done. Okay, so there's your mean, your median, your mode. I'm not sure if this one does range. It might actually do range. No, you know what? We might need to, if you want to do the range and do it in Google Sheets, you want to find your minimum and your maximum and then subtract them, because that's all the range is. So you can do MIN, and we can find the minimum value in the data set and press enter. So this is our minimum. And then I can do MAX to find my maximum. So this is my max. And then to find my range, I want to do my highest minus my lowest. So you're going to press equals. I'm going to click the highest one, the max, and I'm going to subtract my lowest one, which is the minimum. And there's my range. So now I have all my statistics that I could possibly need for this data set. Oh, except for one, we wanted the variance, right? So variance is basically, if you think of the standard deviation, they describe it in the PowerPoint as the square root of the variance is the standard deviation. So if we have standard deviation here, if I want to find my variance, I'm just going to square what I got for my standard deviation. So I'm going to press equals. I'm going to click my standard deviation. I'm going to press, so it should be above your number 6. So you're going to press Shift 6. So you get this little, what we call a caret in mathematics. It's a little up arrow. And I would square it. So I press 2 and press equals. and therefore my variance is 310. Now it wants to square all of these because what happens in Google Sheets is it's trying to predict what you want to do next to save you time. I don't want to autofill because I don't want to square all these values. I'm going to cut that out. So my variance is 310. My standard deviation is about 17.6. My mean is 78. My median is 84. There was no mode. Our minimum was 38. Our maximum was 97. And our range was 59. So that is how you calculate all of those values in Google Sheets. Please let me know if you need any other help. This class has not reached out very much lately, so I am a little worried that you're just not reaching out because you're afraid to ask. Please don't be afraid to ask. Everybody gets confused sometimes. I am more than happy to help. So keep them coming. I hope you enjoyed this video.